Yes, hello.
Hello, hold on 1 second, please. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the delay to the participants. This is the last session of the Protected Area course on Protected Area Systems and Management and Design. This is the last session of the 8 weeks course, and thank you very much for the European Commission, the Joint Research Center, for attending this invitation for assessing and monitoring protected areas with the Digital Observatory for Protected Areas. Today we will have Santiago Saura. Santiago is a forest landscape ecologist that joined the GRC in February 2016. His main interests are quantitative methods in spatial ecology, landscape connectivity analysis, and forest biodiversity conservation. His research outputs include applied recommendations for landscape planning and endangered species conservation, new methods for the analysis of habitat connectivities and landscape configuration, and the implementation of some of these new methods in freely available software tools. Before joining the center, Santiago was full professor at the Department of Natural Systems and Resources of the Technical University of Madrid in Spain. Information of his publications is available in Google search, Santiago.Saura, if you want to take a look at his skills. Thank you very much, Santiago, for attending this. And before starting, I would like to let you know that Santiago is going to give the presentation. After the presentation finishes, we will be open the Q&A session. So welcome everybody, and Santiago, all yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate in the course and for almost closing the course after several weeks. As you have said, we will be talking today about the Digital Observatory for Protected Areas, which is developed in the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. This is a project that is coordinated. The project leader is Gregoire Dubois, who is here with me, and also other staff from the Commission is working in this project, like Lucy Bastin and myself. And we will provide an overview of the DOPA indicators and capabilities to you today, as well as other related tools that are foreseen to be developed in the near future. So mainly the outline summary of what we are going to talk about today is, well, first of all, who are we, the Joint Research Center, which is the purpose of this center and which kind of activities do we develop here. Later, we will move more specifically to the introduction to the Digital Observatory of Protected Areas. What is it, what components it has, which types of indicators, which types of data sources are integrated into DOPA. And that will take us to the first part, specific part of assessing protected areas with the currently available already DOPA Explorer, so the Explorer for protected areas in the current version 1. The first version is already available online, as we will describe later. Later we'll be briefly providing an overview of how DOPA is being updated and integrated new developments related to the monitoring of protected areas, land cover change, and also water bodies changes, surface water bodies change to time, etc. And also, finally, we will cover a final related to the funding of biodiversity conservation activities in protected areas, which is also covered by a related tool, which is called e-conservation. So, well, we are a staff of the Joint Research Center. This is a part of the European Commission. So the European Commission is basically the executive body of the European Union. It's based in Brussels, in Belgium. And a service, internal service, a part of the European Commission is the scientific service, the scientific research service, which is the Joint Research Center. The mission of the ERC basically is to provide support to the policies of the European Union, scientific technical support to the policies, which is independent, the support from the interest of particular groups, stakeholders, or member states. So it's unbiased support to this type of policy making. The JRC has been working for quite some decades. It was established in the 1950s, but it has been growing through time. Currently, there are like about 3,000 persons working in the different institutes or directorates that are within the JRC, and they are located in different countries. So there are institutes on different topics like health, food security, IT studies, some things related to also financial issues, nuclear issues, and also within this variety of centers and research lines, there is the groups working in sustainable resources, environment, and biodiversity, like our team working in DOPA. We are specifically located in Ispra, which is in the north of Italy, close to Switzerland, next to a big lake, which is Lake Maggiore. And this is the biggest site of the Joint Research Center, where more centers and research groups, are based in the north of Italy. Why we are talking about European institution, we are talking about European policies, then why we do specifically work on global biodiversity? Well, there are a few reasons for that. First of all is that the biodiversity losses that may happen worldwide are affecting the European Union. We're losing eventually biological resources, genetic diversity, and this is not just of concern for the local areas where this biodiversity is lost, of course, but it's also true that the European Union itself may contributes to a certain degree to the global biodiversity loss, not only because of the losses happening inside Europe, but also because even the resources that are taken from other countries imported to support European economies are also having an impact outside European Union and may have an impact on biodiversity as well. For these reasons, one of the clear targets of the strategy for conservation of biodiversity in the European Union is to help to avert the global biodiversity loss. And in fact, the European Union has recently stepped up, let's say, with this target and tried to put more emphasis in reaching this objective for the 2020. On the other hand, the European Union and the member states are strong donors in some cases of funding for biodiversity conservation, particularly in developing countries through development cooperation funding, and there are quite strong examples of that. For example, particularly in Africa, in the last couple of decades or a bit more than 500 million euros have been invested from the European Union in biodiversity conservation, supporting efficient management of protected areas, etc. And for example, this is also the case now and is likely to continue next years through the, for example, big project which is BioPAMA project, Biodiversity and Protected Area Monitoring, which is focusing in Africa, the Pacific and the Caribbean, right? There are also other initiatives related to this development cooperation, like the Be4Life, Biodiversity for Life initiative, that is expected to mobilize about 800 million euros up to in 6 years up to 2020, right? So this is a strong concern for Europe in general, how to support biodiversity conservation all worldwide in some ways. So here is basically where the DOPA comes in. So the Digital Observatory of Protected Areas has various reasons to be developed and to exist as in its present form and in the forms that it will take in the next months or years. First of all, the European Commission, but not only, need to have an information system that is able to provide information, of course, on the protected areas worldwide, but in a way that is comparable through all the countries, ecoregions in the world. Okay, we know there are informations locally in different countries, etc., but this is quite hard for the Commission or for other international agencies to take decisions on the basis of that local information, because they tend to be very heterogeneous in quality, quantity, and compatibility of all these data sets. So there is a need for this global harmonized reference systems that provides comparable indicators for all countries and ecoregions and protected areas in the world. Okay. So once this DOPA is developed and available, donors, funding agencies, policymakers can, of course, evaluate questions which are of utmost importance, such as which protected areas are more unique by the species composition or the ecosystems they harbor, where are the pressures likely to put more stress on biodiversity to cause a higher biodiversity loss in the next years, which areas have had or have had not support from donors, European Commission, another World Bank, and other international donors. So all these questions are the main focus of the Digital Observatory of Protected Areas. So in addition to this, the DOPA is strongly committed to open-based service, open access to everybody, where the data sets are public, where the decisions on the data sets are transparent, and when information is as much as possible repeatable and accessible to everyone in the world, not just to the European Commission or other international agencies. So all of the DOPA is basically developed as a web-based service that in fact can be opened and used freely by any interested user, not institutional, but any person can access all this information that is provided through DOPA. I think that I'm not wrong if previously in the course you have already got familiar with the WDPA, the World Database on Protected Areas. This is a reference data set, and so the question might be, which is the difference between the WDPA and the DOPA? Well, the difference is that the WDPA, of course, is a reference data set that is basically built from the contributions of each individual country that report the protected areas to the WCMC, and this is updated and managed in this world database. But DOPA, what it's doing is combining this information, of course, on where the protected areas are and other characteristics of the protected areas with other data sources that are available from either within the JRC or either from other international agencies or organizations, United Nations or other international organizations, and combines the WDPA with this information to provide indicators that inform about the values, pressures, and conditions, conservation status of different protected areas. So, for example, if we want to know which protected areas have more threatened endemic species, then we basically can answer this question through DOPA, which combines the WDPA with the REDS list from the IUCN, the REDS list information on species distributions, okay? Or which ecoregions of the world have higher or lower protected area coverage or protected area connectivity. So this is basically combining again WDPA with ecoregions, with some spatial analysis for these particular indicators, which are again delivered already or will be delivered in the future, in the near future, in DOPA, to DOPA. So basically the idea is DOPA is integrating a lot of reference data sets from different organizations, not just the JRC, okay, so from the IUCN, from it could be different even teams, research teams or institutions providing reference data set that can be used and compared globally. So we have, as we said before, the WDPA, the World Database on Protected Areas, but very strongly as well, on the top of that, DOPA is relying on Earth observation information gathered from different satellites that have been used in recent years and others that will be used for DOPA in the years to come. This includes from Landsat, MERIS, and also the Copernicus and Land Services and Sentinel missions that have been recently launched by the European agencies, and also information on species from the REDS list mainly, okay, and other data sources that are integrated to produce these indicators that are with the intention of being available globally for all the countries and ecoregions of the world. Well, of course, which are the uses of DOPA? As we said before, any of you, anybody, any person with access to the internet can be a user of DOPA, can access, browse, examine the information indicators, compare protected areas countries to each other based on those indicators. But among the many users, there are a few of them that are key users, and one of them is, of course, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which has itself recognized the value of DOPA to support the national biodiversity strategies and action plans, and other action plans related to, as stated in one of the decisions from CBD. And apart from the official recognition in this decision, in fact, the CBD has extensively used quite a lot the information from DOPA for the country dossiers that has been compiling in recent times for assessing the progress towards the IG targets 11 and 12, particularly in these country dossiers. It's also used in regional workshops where the CBD is further developing these initiatives, and especially locally, and also in the Protected Planet Report. For example, it's about to be produced, the Protected Planet Report 2016, so the updated version of the last report, which was 2 years ago. And in this report, for example, there are indicators that have been derived and produced by the DOPA team, such as those related particularly to the ecoregions of the world. Right? So there are already quite a few users, official, institutional, and also more, let's say, personal uses of this data across the world. Within DOPA, on the, let's say, the DOPA umbrella, there are different tools with different angles, as we will describe next. But the one that is already available in the website, in the web, and that you can already access, let's say, right now, is DOPA Explorer, the current version of DOPA Explorer that will be updated also later this year. But the first version of it is including information on protected areas for all the countries and ecoregions of the world, and also for each of the individual protected areas that are at least 100 square kilometers in size. Okay, and of course there are different indicators for country, ecoregion, and protected area level that we will briefly summarize next. You can access directly the DOPA with its full content with the website indicated there in the slide. And once you get there, you can either, in this case, probably continue with English, but you could also use all the interfaces, and also the manuals are available in French, in Spanish, and Portuguese. So it's able to cover different languages with the same information. So this is with what you will basically get if you go to this website. So this is basically the starting point from DOPA. Well, this is basically a web-based GIS. What we see in this web-based GIS depends on the user selection. So here now we are basically only showing the WDPA, so the protected areas larger than 100 square kilometers according to the WDPA. But we could show other layers related to protected areas, to the bird, mammal, and amphibian records, satellite images, water information, population information. This is up to the user to select. But typically, after this first, let's say, global overview of these layers, more visual overview, what you would do is go into this corner of the upper right corner where you see select a country. So possibly here you will select the country of interest for assessments or your indicators. And once you do that, there you will get specifically a set of indicators at the country level, which are shown here in the screen. Not all of them are here, most of them are here, but basically in this case for Angola, we have the number of protected areas, total number of protected areas, how many of them are larger than 100 square kilometers. Remember that this is the threshold above which indicators are given individually for each protected area. Okay. Then we have the total area of land protected, the total area of sea protected, and the protected area coverage in percentage of total land and sea area by protection category according to the IUCN. And then we have here the list of protected areas, and well, they are classified as terrestrial, marine, or mixed areas, which cover both terrestrial and marine realms. And you have a set of indicators already here. There is a IUCN category, the area of each protected area, the species irreplaceability indicator. So this means if this protected area is protecting a species, well, I would say it's already the other way around. So how much a species relies on the protection provided by this protected area, right? So if you have a species, you have many species that are only protected by this protected area, this will get a higher score of this irreplaceability index. It's the only protected area that covers this number of species. While if all of them are common, you will get protected elsewhere in the world, then you will get a lower value for this indicator. Then you have a number, segment number, which is basically the number of distinct habitat types based on a segmentation using a set of environmental variables. You have indices based on the diversity of terrestrial habitats, marine diversity based on bathymetry, the standard deviation of bathymetry, indicators on population pressure, population change, agricultural pressure, roads inside and outside the protected area, etc. Then after this, you can see also indicators now related to the species. So we have that in this country, how many species are there in total according to the IUCN Red List, how many of them are protected, or percentage of them that are protected, how many of these species are threatened, and then which percentage of the threatened are protected by the protected areas in this country, number of endemic, threatened endemic, and again the coverage of the endemic and the threatened endemic by by the whole set of protected areas in the country. And then you have also statistics for the ecoregions that are present in the country, and basically how much of the country, how much of the protected areas cover this ecoregion in the country compared to the different statistics, depending if it's referred to the worldwide distribution of the ecoregion or to the country distribution of the ecoregion, etc. You could examine this further in the website and in the manual if you're interested in more details here. Then, usually, the next step would be possibly to look at the species information, right? For example, here we have the number of species, in this case birds, well, mammals, insects that are present in this particular area, and also they are classified by whether they are critically endangered, vulnerable, near threatened, least concern, etc. Right? So you have this information by categories, like some taxa and threatened status, we could say, but you have also the entire list, and you can download this list for the entire country or for each particular protected area larger than 100 square kilometers. You have also statistics on the land cover types that are present in the site using the global remote sensing, global land cover maps derived from remote sensing, and you have also information on well, climatic variables, topographic variables that are derived also globally from global data sets. And interestingly as well, apart from the indicators that you get for each protected area, you also get these values of all these indicators we have mentioned briefly before. You get them compared with the average value of those indicators at the level of the entire country. So here in red, you are seeing these radar plots is showing the value of, for example, this protected area, the national park. Iona has a very high diversity, richness of mammal species, right? Much higher than the gray area will be here, the average of the protected areas in the country, and quite close to the maximum value of this indicator in all the protected areas of the country. So in this way, you can get a quick snapshot of which are the values and also the threats that are happening in this area with a higher proportion than in other areas. For example, this area has quite more diversity of terrestrial and marine environments, but also has a pressure of internal roads that is at least close to the average of the country average for protected areas, right? So another case here, so this has a high pressure of agriculture, while has, for example, a much lower richness of amphibians than the average protected area in this country. Okay. In addition to this, for each particular protected area, you have not only the values of the indicators, but also you have the reference, more detailed reference to the ranking of that protected area at the country level, which we briefly showed before based on the radar plot and the average country level values. but you can also get the values for each protected area in the country in this plot, and specifically the position of the protected area that we are focusing in relative to this country ranking, or the same thing for the a particular ecoregion, in this case the Angolan Mopan woodlands. Okay, so here we have that for this particular ecoregion, the species irreplaceability for birds for this protected area is slightly higher than the average of the country values. Okay, and the same for other indicators. This is human population density pressure, and you can see that this particular park is the one with the highest human population pressure of all the protected areas in this ecoregion of Angola and Mopan woodlands that are considered in the DOPA. Okay. Well, in addition to this, so basically so far we have seen what is already now available in DOPA version 1, and what you can already access and examine in the website available already now. There are a number of indicators and improvements that will be included in the next version, DOPA Explorer 2, to be released by the end of this year, by the COP, the Conference of the Parties, which is to be held in December. Okay. Among those indicators, there are connectivity indicators for protected areas at the country and ecoregion level. So basically here what we are doing is, I will not go into the details of this, which are a bit analytic in part, but basically we are assessing the probability that 2 points, if you, let's say, choose 2 points randomly within the protected area coverage in a given country, how probable is that these 2 points are connected to each other, right? So this gives us a comparison between the total protected areas, so the total protected area coverage, and the proportion of that is actually connected. So we have, for example, in this plot here, we have a total protected area coverage of 22%, right? The sum all these two greens together, which is above the IKI target for the 17% of protected area coverage. However, when we look at the connectivity, only about half, a bit more, 12% of total country area is actually corresponding to protected connected lands. And then within this protected connected part here, we also disclose which part is connected, because you can move from one protected area to the other by just following a set of adjacent protected areas, so continuously moving through protected land, and which part of the connectivity is because you need to move through unprotected lands, hopefully with protected areas that are not too far from each other to make the connectivity feasible enough for the species under consideration, right? So these type of indicators are now being calculated at an advanced stage and will be available later on this year in the new DOPA version. We also will have a strong emphasis in the new DOPA version on monitoring, which means monitoring, we will say DOPA global monitoring. This again means that we need repeated measurements that are each of them comparable worldwide and consistent across time. So as you can imagine here, we strongly rely on satellite images, Earth observation programs to provide this kind of trends and indicators on changes in protected areas. So the new DOPA version for December will basically focus and concentrate on land cover change. Okay, basically using, well, let's go for the next slide, you will see it better here. We will use basically the new maps available from the European Space Agency, the land cover maps that have been released this year, and that have three dates from 2000, 2005, 2010, etc. Okay, so we have already the calculation on progress on these indicators for each protected area, how not only the present composition of land cover, but also the trends in time according to these data sets. And also one other data set that is being very recently developed here at in this case within the Joint Research Center is a global data set on surface waters covering all the globe at a resolution of 30 meters and covering not only the distribution at a given date, but the changes in surface water bodies through a period of 30 years, from, let's say, the 80s till now. So this is a very powerful, is the most detailed, highest quality available data set on water bodies. And of course, the importance of surface waters for biodiversity is widely acknowledged. So we will be including this data set in the indicators and the trends for the protected areas in the new DOPA version. Here you have an example for one important bird area in Iraq, where according to this data set, and this is quite striking figures, but only in 30 years, more than 2/3 of the permanent water surfaces have been lost. And about, well, there's a number here, about this number should be updated, it should be about 90% of the seasonal water surfaces have been also lost in 30 years, which is an amazing, terrible trend in this case. And well, these trends are quite heterogeneous, depending on the regions, depending on the impacts of climate change, but also mainly depending on the impacts of land use, which is being the main driver for these losses, or in some cases changes, not only losses, in the distribution of surface waters. So this will be provided for each protected area in the new DOPA version, right? The data set that I'm mentioning here is, I think I already said, is based on Landsat data, 30-meter resolution, 30 years of coverage worldwide, and is covering permanent waters, meaning areas of the land that are covered by water all throughout the year and for several years consecutive, seasonal, that obviously are only covered, say, winter, and then, but all the years are covered in winter, and ephemeral water are some parts of the land that are covered 1 or 2 years, but not consistent throughout the time series, so not really seasonal or permanent, but there are some records of water in at least several of the years that have been recorded, okay? So there is a lot of information coming from this data set that will be available in DOPA and useful, I guess, for many potential applications related to protected areas and biodiversity conservation and management. Finally, one of the other components of DOPA, of the DOPA umbrella, let's say, and looking more to a different angle, looking more to the funding angle, is what is called e-conservation. E-conservation is already available online in a beta version, more for demonstration purposes so far, but the main goal of e-conservation is to understand and depict who is doing what and where in conservation, how much money has been spent in conservation, and this question is quite difficult to ask in general, but particularly focusing on the main international donors, of course, the European Commission, but the World Bank and other development agencies and international initiatives on conservation that are putting money throughout the years in different protected areas, but in reality, when a new project is going to be funded, it's quite hard to have this information available and to know which areas have had a lot of funding already, which other protected areas didn't have any previous initiative or very little, and if there is any overlap or any redundancy between the conservation efforts, or otherwise where to allocate more wisely the new funding that is to be spent in the next years. So far, in the DOPA, in the e-conservation version now available, the beta version, there are about 5,000 projects mapped. This means that we have, of course, the amount of money spent, the location, one or several protected areas, the target of the project in terms of management actions, and this beta version has been very well received by several institutions, European Commission, the United Nations Development Programme, World Bank, and also some agencies from particular countries that are also funding biodiversity conservation in developing countries as well. So this is, as I said, already available, and the next thing will be to discuss what is coming next. In fact, part of it we already mentioned before, but you could say that in the DOPA umbrella there are 3 things that will be coming or will be further developed in the next months or years, depending on the cases. So the first of them is DOPA Reporter, which is basically focused on, you could say, a simplified way, easy way to access all the information or most of the information available now in DOPA Explorer, but in a more DOPA Explorer, as you saw on the slides, is basically a web-based interface where you click to the map, you look the sites, you look the protected areas, you click in other tabs to find all the information. This is quite interactive, quite flexible, but for some users of DOPA, for example, such as the CBD, it is much more interesting to have let's say, we could say a single click that produces all the relevant information for a given country or a given ecoregion. So it will provide like a more report format, written report in one go of all this information, or most of the information that can be obtained from DOPA for this type of country dossiers or other types of assessment at the country or ecoregion level. So this DOPA reporter, which is based linked with DOPA Explorer, will be released in the Conference of the Parties, so later this year in December. Okay, so that will be already available by then. Then also we have the Open DOPA, and the purpose of the Open DOPA is that, as we said before, DOPA is itself intending to provide global analysis, global indicators, comparable indicators, and this has pros and cons. The pros are the comparability. The pros are we can really rely that information is measured in the same way in different places. The cons are, of course, that the global data sets are not as accurate as the regional data sets, as the local data sets, or, for example, the species records from the red list are not fully accurate. We know that. But park managers or national authorities may have information that is more detailed on these species distributions, or may have more detailed information on the funding of conservation actions in these areas. So the purpose of Open DOPA is making DOPA available, open to other users to in fact provide information into the system, refine, let's say, you could say correct or complement the information based on local sources, which could be national bodies, could be managers in a given protected area, or even could be citizen-sized science-based approach where appropriate further enrich and complement all this information. And then finally, Open DOPA will be for next year, not this year, but also next year, the first version of beta version of DOPA Analyst will be released, and this DOPA Analyst is basically focused to more advanced users, which are somehow, in some cases, in the interface of research, or some other cases are in the interface of more advanced management questions, more specific queries, more specific needs that are not covered in DOPA Reporter or DOPA Explorer as it is now. So this will be a more interactive, flexible interface where particular analysis and more detailed data sets will be available for those more specialized users. It will be using, of course, all the information from the Copernicus program from the European Union, and also supported by Google Earth Engine, because some of these analyses are quite computationally heavy. So, well, this is the overview of what is already now out there for you to use and for you to help you with your assessment, if possible, at the different levels of analysis, and also an overview of what we plan to deliver in the near future, in this year or next year. And I just have to thank you for your time following our presentation, and hopefully you will use DOPA in the future at different levels and get some of these indicators that may be interesting for you, and that will be the best measure of success of our work and presentation. So thank you very much, and of course feel free to send us any question. I would be pleased to discuss with you any aspect of all this work.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I hope participants found it useful and interesting as I did. I would like to introduce Cristina Soppel from our team at UNDP. Christy will moderate the Q&A session, so please feel free to raise your hand in the GoToWebinar control panel, or writing your question in the questions tab, and then Christy will be able to read it. Christy, welcome to the session, and then please send all your questions to start the discussion.
Thank you, Gregoire, for the very informative presentation, and thank you, Diego, for the introduction. We'll start right in with questions. The first question is coming from Zoltan, and the question is, he says, my question may not be directly linked to the presentation, but I must ask it. How does JRC help the European Commission to gather information about management practices of Natura 2000 sites in Europe?
Well, that's a good and difficult question. Well, what is already available with the DOPA set of tools, and particularly e-conservation, is that we have information on the live projects that have been developed in the different Natura 2000 sites. So this is already accessible in the beta version, and hopefully this will be of interest for part of this question. However, it's true that other sources that will be needed to fully answer this question are not available now. Many of the efforts are implemented nationally in each country, and we still don't have this information available in the DOPA, of course. Well, in fact, the DOPA is not willing, let's say the DOPA, excluding the Open DOPA, is not willing to include national information, but global data sets, as I said before. But e-conservation perhaps could include all this information, part of this information in the future, beyond the live projects that is what is available now. Grégoire, I don't know if you want to add something here.
Maybe just to stress, this is Grégoire Dubois speaking. The whole talk has been given by my colleague Santiago. So the information on Natura 2000, there is information that you will find in DOPA that you don't have in the Natura 2000 viewer. But as we work on a global scale here, the GRC, we are gathering a different type of information. We focus mainly on information that is not so easily accessible, especially in developing countries. In the EU, there is a very well-organized Natura 2000 network where information is gathered at a much higher resolution. But this is really an EU-scale project, while the DOPA is really a global scale. So very often, actually, you won't even be able to compare the land cover classes when you are using assessments in terms of land cover change. It's just a different process. Of course, now the colleagues from Natura 2000 are looking into the DOPA because they find the technology used to integrate information and share information a useful approach. But one has to stress that Natura 2000 is not something that is comparable, and that's something that you can extend at a global scale. That would be fantastic, but we are very, very far from that at the moment. So DOPA is really like a compass on global biodiversity.
Hello, I got sorry, I got unmuted.
Yeah, you're unmuted, so feel free to contribute to the discussion or continue to ask your questions.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much. So my name again is Zoltán Kunan. Obviously, my questions are related to Europe because I am from Europe. The first question, I actually had two questions. The first was about this management issue. And let me a bit clarify or add a little bit to this. Are you going to include also information about management effectiveness evaluation, for instance, on a global scale? I mean, not just about Natura 2000. And the reason why I asked about Natura 2000 was twofold. If I try to be very, very simple, and I know it's an oversimplification of management, but basically in Europe we can talk about, are you doing an active field management of an area in order to keep our biodiversity? Let's do, for instance, grazing, or I don't know, cutting trees or whatever, or are you going to do in an area wilderness management? So this kind of very simple information, A or B, it's really hard to find anywhere, and I don't know whether you are going to include it in the DOPA or in Europe in Natura 2000. And again, management effectiveness evaluation, are they going to be included in the DOPA or not? And the second question was, my second question was related to the verification of data. Because if I'm checking, and I don't want to criticize, don't get me wrong, I don't want to criticize DOPA. I think so far what I saw, it works excellent, and I think it looks very good. But some of the information is actually false. I just quickly checked Hungary, where I'm from, and the territory of Hungary, for instance, is wrong in the DOPA, the territory of the whole country. And second point, that there is one protected area that is listed 3 times in the database. So the question is, how do you verify the data that is entered into DOPA?
Okay, all good questions. I will start with the management effectiveness before going to the data quality. The management effectiveness, there are a number of initiatives. One is famous MET that is used by many institutions, but it's very I wouldn't say oversimplistic, but it's a very large grain, while we are looking at something fine grained. And you have something fine grained that exists in Europe, but still it's not something that you can extend on the global scale. So in the short term, we don't plan to use any information to put any information in the DOPA on management effectiveness. But you have to realize that we are running large projects in developing countries. One is the BioPAMA project, which is basically setting regional observatories on biodiversity and ecosystem services in the Caribbean, Pacific, and African regions. It's in collaboration with the IUCN, and this project is, as the name says, biodiversity and project area management. It's also about management effectiveness, and my colleagues here have developed a whole tool called IMET, which is about assessing management effectiveness with a focus on African countries. You need to adapt the methods to the different realms, to the different regions, to the different problems. So it's quite something that is challenging. But at this stage, in DOPA, we don't plan to, we don't have the resources, as simple as that, to work on this. So ideally, I would try to embed the MET, because this is the only tool that has been rolled out at the global scale into the DOPA, but this has to be discussed with UNEP, WCM, the IUCN. Now, regarding the data quality, I like to show actually all the problems that we have. We use global data sets, we use global databases. You are lucky to find 3 times the same name for a given project areas. Sometimes you find it 7 times, 8 times. This is a huge challenge due to the management of the world database of project areas by UNEP WCMC. I know they do their best to improve the data. We use data, we expose the data. We like to get feedback on the problems so that we can get back to the data owners. And it's the same with the IUCN Red List. You know, people are criticizing it. We just use massive amount of information that most of the people can't process on their own computers. So the data quality is what we get. There's this expression, you know, rubbish in, rubbish out. There are certain regions where the information is highly uncertain and poorly documented. Other regions have very good quality. So the redundancy in the names of the parts, it's very often because they have been either written in different ways in the WDPA, so there can be an accent in the names, or they have different classification in terms of management. So you have very often redundancies. Sometimes we also, I think you will still find a few places in the database where the names are not even readable. You will have question marks, but we don't have the means to check all the 16,000 product areas that we are documenting in the DOPA. We would have to go through each single part to check what is first the redundancy, and to try to decide on what is wrong and what is right. But it's not our responsibility actually to manage the WDPA. So this is hosted elsewhere. So I see the DOPA Expo as a way to expose the issue, so that actually the national authorities can respond to these incongruences and basically give feedback to the WCMC. We have been working hand in hand with them these last years, and this has been effective. But of course, there are all the time other glitches that remain untackled if the national authorities don't deal with that. Regarding the country borders of Hungary, that's interesting. Something to say also that is quite important. At the moment, the DOPA is based on the WDPA version of 2014, when we released together with UNEP WCMC the Project Planet report. Since we are collaborating with them again this year for releasing the Protected Planet report 2016, we have updated all of the data. It's not yet online. We are computing still quite a large number of indicators. We are also correcting or updating our country boundaries, which are actually more dynamic than one would wish. But regarding the borders of Hungary, that would be, I would be curious to hear about that. If you can send us a mail, maybe separately, about the features you identified that were wrong, that would help us to understand what the issue is exactly.
Yes, because in some cases we have problems with countries with not all the country boundaries are, let's say, some of them are disputed territories, or they are claimed by 2 countries, so that's an issue for us where to report the indicator. No, is this for India, for Pakistan, so it's a problem there. But for Hungary, we should not have that problem, so it's good to check what you were saying before. And in the case that a protected area with the same name is reported 2-3 times or more, this is happening not only in Hungary, it's happening in Spain, it's happening in other countries. This is basically because, not necessarily because of an error, but because of the same site being designated as a national park, as a Natura 2000 site for the habitats, for the birds, as a UNESCO World Heritage site. So you have the same area with different categories, and they are repeatedly even covering exactly the same polygon, or in some cases with slight differences, overlapping in the same area, and that's why you have these duplicate records by the name. That's an issue, but it's not easy to solve because we basically need to keep those records, especially when they are not exactly, the national park is not exactly the same boundary as the Natura 2000 site, even if the name is the same. So it's a tricky issue, and at least you have all the categories listed there, and you can get the indicator for national park, protected Natura 2000 site, for the one you are most interested in a particular case. But there are lots of issues, and any feedback, especially on the Hungary boundaries, would be welcome from your side. So thanks a lot.
Great, thank you, Zoltan, for that interesting discussion. We have a question from Sedupto, and I just wanted to remind everyone that you have the opportunity to raise your hand to ask a question, and you can also type questions into the box. The ability to obtain protected areas data and to use it for planning and management is critical. So I hope that we can have a really interesting discussion with our experts today. So with that, I'm going to unmute Sedupto. Hi, Sedupto.
Hi.
Are you there?
Yes,
Hi,
yes.
let's hear your question.
We are here, but I don't think that,
We are listening to your question.
but not the question. We don't hear you.
It looks like there might be an issue because his microphone is gray. Sedupto, is it possible for you to type in your question for us? Okay, let's give him a few minutes, see if we can correct the connectivity issue. Sedupto, if you can type in your question, email it, or try to raise your hand again once the microphone is working, that would be great. Any other questions? I'm seeing comments from Elena. Hi, Elena.
Hello. Do you hear me right now?
We hear you great.
Hello?
Hi. Yes,
okay.
hi.
Hi. Thank you for very, very interesting presentation. I'm in particular very interested to know how to use e-conservation tool, and if is it possible, for example, extract national and regional data. Besides, I opened a website, a DOPA website. I found that there is login options here, so it means that you can register to use this information. Yes, and also I see that many different layers for the GIS tool. Some of them quite extensive, more than 15 megabytes. For example, I would be interested how it's possible to use information from this huge database for the national and regional purposes, for example, for the analysis of the existing information, for the improvement data sets, and for the decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, thank you very much for the several questions. You don't need to register to access the information in DOPA Explorer and all the other DOPA tools. So you can just access the website and go to e-conservation DOPA Explorer without need of any registering. So that's easy from that side. Okay. On the other hand, with e-conservation, you indeed can get all the projects that have been funded per country. So you can click in wherever the country, India or whatever the name of the country you're interested in, go there and you will get listed all the projects with a description, and you can have that disclosed by donors, by management actions, by different classifications that are have been done for each of these projects. So this is possible. At a regional level, I'm not sure that is directly possible, so you would probably need to get that country by country and then aggregate that. So where can you?
I think you have to realize that with e-conservation, what you have online is, it sounds like a big database with 5,000 projects. It is the case, but I wouldn't use it at the moment. It's as it's stressed in the interface, it's a beta version. This means that it's not representative of the whole global funding activities for biodiversity conservation. So if you make any statistics out of that, at the moment you would have mainly a very biased vision of what has been done. The data collection has been only done with a few partners. So if you're interested really in what the World Bank did, with what the LIFE projects have been doing, then yes, you can use e-conservation because we have quite reliable information. But if you want to assess global conservation activities in certain regions, I wouldn't use that now, at least, because the data are too biased. It's not exhaustive. We are aiming at being exhaustive for each big donor by well, probably by the end of next year. But at this stage, it's mainly a first step to explain what we intend to do with e-conservation. So please be very careful in the way you use that.
Yeah, and one more thing regarding the maps and the layer. Basically, DOPA is like a web-based interface where you can see the layers. So you can see the WDPA, you can see the remote sensing images, but you cannot download them from there. Okay. What you can download from DOPA is Excel tables with indicator values, species list in a given country or protected area, but not, let's say, actually many of the maps that you are seeing as the background of the interface. However, in the new DOPA version, we will put more information, and already now in the current DOPA version, in the DOPA website, there are some maps that you can download, but not directly from the DOPA Explorer interface. Okay, so in the future in DOPA Analyst, there will be more capabilities of downloading spatial explicit maps on the products, and also in the website, but outside the DOPA Explorer interface, you may download some of those maps. I don't know if that, I'm sorry, because I don't know if we covered all the questions or if you have any other related question to this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elena, for that interesting discussion. Sedupta, we're going to try again. I'm lowering your hand and unmuting you. Hi, Sedupta. Are you there? Okay, looks like we're still having some connectivity issues. Other questions? Again, you can raise your hand. Or, okay, we have one from Mercy. Hi, Mercy. Let me unmute you and you can ask your question. Hi.
Hi, here's Mercy. I'm sorry, I actually missed the introductory part of today's presentation, but I joined in when the presenter was talking about DOPA, the DOPA tool. I just got a little bit confused because I know that the World Database of Protected Area has got also a lot of data about protected areas. So how different is this World Database of Protected Areas from the DOPA tool? That's my concern.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. There's, yeah, well, we briefly talked about that earlier, but to go back to it, I don't know if you can see the screen now. So basically, this is a good question. So we have the WDPA, which is the World Database on Protected Areas. This is a database that is maintained by the IUCN, WCNC, and is putting the information from the countries that they delivered information on the protected areas, etc. And then, how is the WDPA different from the DOPA? Well, DOPA uses WDPA, but combines the WDPA with other data sources to provide the indicators, okay? So the WDPA, for instance, combined with the red list from IUCN, will tell us how many endemic species are in a given protected area, or will tell us in a given country how well the endangered species are covered by protected areas, or will tell us which ecoregions in a country are well covered, or which is the connectivity between the protected areas in a country or ecoregion, or will tell us the trends in water bodies within the protected areas. But only the WPA is not answering to any of these questions. These indicators are obtained combining the WPA with remote sensing maps of water bodies, remote sensing maps on land cover, red list species information, ecoregion maps, and other source data that are analyzed especially and combined in the indicator.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Are there questions for Gregoire and Santiago? Gregoire, Santiago, other thoughts that you have to share based on this discussion today? We have about 15 minutes left.
No, well, you have to realize that there's much ongoing work. You have things that are online that have been well discussed. What is online is still a bit outdated now, with mainly data from 2014. So you will have updated versions with new indicators by the end of the year, all targeting, of course, the support to the CBD Cup. I think it's very important to realize that what we have is like a compass. I don't know if maybe that's the same expression that Santiago has used. As a compass, it doesn't give you the exact location on where to go. It gives you a direction. It's something that is useful for many people to orient themselves in the huge amount of information that they receive. You have to realize that all these donors are overwhelmed with requests for funding, everything, and it's of course impossible. You have to define priorities. And similarly, these people who are maybe sometimes sitting on billions of euros to spend for conservation actually are only very few people. So they cannot cope with thousands of NGOs or governments asking for support for certain countries. They need something that is comparable across all scale that can orient themselves. And this is very much the purpose of the DOPA at the moment. It's a compass. What we are rolling out next year with the Open DOPA, and this I hope will be in collaboration with BirdLife International, with Conservation International, with UNEP, WCMC, IUCN, and all the big players around, is to have another entry point for gathering information that will collect information directly from the ground, while the DOPA is at the moment using mainly a top-down approach. We want to have a bottom-up approach that will allow us to build a bridge between the decision makers and the people on the ground. So the Open DOPA will be the GPS that we would really need to be able to effectively identify local issues, local problems, and provide the best answers. This is something that GRC alone will never be able to do on its own, and it's not even with in collaboration with BirdLife and all these big institutions. It has to be a global collective effort. There is a wealth of information that is spread over in documents, in PhD thesis, in master students' thesis, and even sometimes, just tourists getting at certain places, gathering some information. All this information, there is a lot of information that is available that is completely unused and completely fragmented in the conservation landscape. And we really try with DOPA to bring all these actors together to make this information accessible to everyone. And we really count on everyone here to help us do this job and achieve something that has not been done over the last years, which is to have proper information systems on biodiversity conservation, because this is at the moment extremely far from what is really needed. And I think, yeah, that would be my word of conclusion. And I really want to thank UNDP for organizing all this training to allow us to present our work in this webinar, to interact with people, because this is a very effective way for us to move forward, to understand what the issues are, and to get feedback on what we are doing. And without this feedback, we would be working blindly. So thanks again very much to all of you for being there and for organizing this excellent webinar.
Well, thank you. The pleasure is ours. I do have one last question for you, and I'll let folks know in the audience that we do have at least 8 more minutes. So if you have other questions, please do type them in or raise your hand. But this is the question from Seducto, and it's, what are the constraints faced by DOPA? I do think you've touched on that a little bit already. And the example is, what if park management is not transparent in sharing information on protected area management that they're doing?
Yeah, well, there are 2 questions there. One, the constraints, well, of course, we would always like to have more detailed, accurate, globally comparable information, because this is what DOPA is relying on. So this is a constraint. Still, we have quite a few important data sets that, of course, locally cannot be accurate, but at the country, at the global level, provide a very useful picture of these indicators. And any improvement in each of these pieces of data, from remote sensing, from species, from WDPA, from all the other pressure indicators, so everything related to this, will make the global information related to protected area management and conservation more efficient, and DOPA more efficient in delivering this information, right? Another issue is that, unfortunately, in many cases, a lot of money is put in funding information on biodiversity, but however, this information is not really open and not really transparent to the end users, to the conservation agencies, and to the managers of parks and national agencies, right? So a big constraint is to really pass the message that everything that is funded with public money should be available for everybody, not just for DOPA, of course, but for any user that can really make use of that information in a format and in a way that is ready for benefiting other conservation projects or other research or monitoring applications. So I think this is a very important message that we need to get through, and DOPA emphasizes a bit what we have available, what could we want to have available, and what we need to fund more or less to have that final outcome at the global level. So that's a constraint, I would say, the data availability, not just because it's not available, but because it's not really open in many cases for anybody to use, which is a problem, especially when this is coming from public money at the end.
Another constraint we are aware of is, of course, the fact that we make everything accessible, but we make it accessible over the internet, and we are perfectly aware that in many developing countries, access, especially large broadband access to the information, is an issue, and so access to the DOPA data is tricky. Of course, we cannot resolve all the problems of the world, and we try to reduce the amount of information that is transmitted over the web, but this is something that is still quite a challenge and a very limiting factors in many areas. So we are aware of that, and well, let's see what we can do about that.
Yes. And regarding the managers wanting to share or not the information on their particular protected areas, well, I fully understand that in some cases this might be because there is sensitive information on endangered species, presence records, or something that may not be want to be published out there for everybody to use, right? That's something that we can understand. For the other type of data, I think we would like to have that as less as possible. But even not at the level of protected area managers, but even at the level of the countries reporting their protected area polygons to the WDPA, some of the countries provide restricted sites. This means that these sites are not available in the public version of the WDPA, and so there are not that many, but in some countries these sites are excluded from many indicators. These protected areas are excluded from many indicators and from many analyses, because of this, let's say, policy at the national level of not making public the location of some of these protected areas. It's not a big percent, it's a small, very small percent, but it still is something that is illustrative of one of the bottlenecks we can find sometimes. So in some cases, some indicators for the protected planning report, we are using the restricted sites in the information. Some others which need to be based in open-based, open information that everybody can access. We cannot include this information, so it's a bit tricky issue that illustrates one of the possible issues that we have to deal with in the daily life of DOPA, let's say.
Thank you for that very informative answer. We have time for one last question. It's coming from Sam. His question is, let's assume you integrated all data accurately. How can this tool be used in conservation when we know many countries, and I'm assuming the government, are not invested in protected areas in nature? And I will unmute Sam to explain a little more about his very provocative and closing question for us today. Hi, Sam.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thank you very much for this valuable presentation. I couldn't convince regarding the accuracy and validation of data gathered and integrated together, but that's not my question. My question is how you can use this question. Let's assume all information and data gathered together profoundly and accurately, but how can you use it in conservation purposes when we know, for instance, many countries like mine, the government doesn't care about the environment or nature? Can you, for instance, convince them to, I don't know, pay attention to conservation purposes?
Well, that's thank you very much for the question. It's a very good question, and probably touches in the concern for biodiversity conservation that many of us have, and probably goes beyond what DOPA can actually do, because this is a more a policy, political question, or even ethical question in some cases. But what is true is that some of the efforts, at least for biodiversity conservation from international donors, they need to have the information globally as DOPA provides to get the decision made, as Gregoire was saying. Even if the national governments are not really putting effort on that, there is a need for other agencies that are willing to act in other countries outside their boundaries and to support actions outside their boundaries to have this information. On the other hand, the fact that the information is available there, out there, anybody to use, and then anybody could say which areas have given high irrepressibility value, or which areas are suffering the highest pressures or are suffering the most intense changes in the last decades. This is an information that itself, it's valuable to make pressure at the political level from NGOs, from the society in general, even from journalists, even from any body or person that wants to put pressure in that sense, of highlighting problems, highlighting priorities, and bringing the agenda back, if not in all the protected areas, at least in some efforts that need to be done where this has not been done properly. So it's like a reference information system that can support, not by itself, of course, but can support these efforts of highlighting problems and priorities that are not being accounted for. That's all I think. That's all we can attempt to do from DOPA, but if that's even a small contribution towards that end, I think that will make us very, very happy indeed.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And with that, I need to close out the presentation for today. Many thanks to our audience for the great and stimulating discussion we've had over the last half an hour, and thank you to Gregoire and Santiago for the very interesting and informative presentation. I hope that this tool will help all of you in your work with protected areas management. And as always, you can continue the discussion online. I also wanted to let everyone know that while this is the last week of active presentations, we will accept course assignments through August 24th. We've had a lot of feedback that folks are still working to complete the modules, do the homework, and listen to these webinars. So we wanted to offer an extra couple of weeks for that. So if everything is done on schedule through August 24th, you will receive a certificate via email shortly after that. Thanks so much to everyone for attending, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Good luck with the rest of the course.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much for inviting us. It was a pleasure.